So that was my first piece of housekeeping, but I want to just welcome everyone. I am Krista Biesecker, Director of Marketing for CareerScope, and we are again happy that you can join us for today's session it's actually part 2 with Michigan Department of Corrections. Just some housekeeping. We are recording and we will send you this recording when we're finished. If you have any questions, just add them to the chat, the Q&A slide is up, that we will be using chat through the session, and our contact information will be available at the end. So if you have questions for either the panelists or anyone else that you see who's joined us, feel free to reach out through that. For those of you who have not joined us before, this is our 3rd webinar with our partners. We're offering the webinar series because basically our mission is to serve your mission. And so we're committed to our partners and to make sure that you achieve your mission and you help those individuals that you serve in a beneficial way. But we're also committed to those individuals themselves, the end users, and those you serve. We want them to identify their best fit careers as they're in transition and identify any opportunities as they move forward on their path. And again, we are committed to listening to our partners and learning from you. And we can learn from each other in these sessions as well. So that is also our 3rd mission for this webinar series. We can then learn from you and then adapt CareerScope to better fit your needs. So with that being said, Jessica, do you know, or is Dean okay? Is he with us?
Yeah, he said that he was waiting for you to let him in.
I don't see him in here. Let's see. He's not on my list, but I'll check one more time.
Okay.
Robert McGeorge is on our list too. Okay, here he is.
Okay, Dean's on.
Welcome, Dean.
Oop, sorry.
Welcome. So you missed my intro, but you have been here before, so you have heard it before. But I was getting to the best part that I was going to ask you guys to please introduce yourselves. But let me just talk a little bit about Michigan Department of Corrections too. They have been partnered with CareerScope since 2001. And just in the past 5 years, they've assessed nearly 40,000 individuals with CareerScope Online and extended their commitment recently. And they are going to be assessing an additional 30,000 individuals in their system. And in our first conversation in June, if you missed that, it's on our YouTube channel. But in our first conversation in June, we talked about how they work really hard to educate employers in the area to understand the benefits of hiring justice-involved individuals and how to expand their talent pool and their hiring practices. They also collaborate with these employers to create training programs so that the returning citizens can be trained for jobs that exist when they leave. Our focus during that June webinar was more on the Vocational Villages program, whereas today in part 2, we're going to focus on the other educational programs throughout their system. And according to their website and what I've learned from the team, their goal of these educational programs, they want to promote employment and they want to promote self-sufficiency, but it also leads to public safety because recidivism and reoffense really decreases with more involvement in the educational programs. So we're going to hear about how they develop an educational plan for every student. We're going to hear how they partner with post-secondary education institutions who provide college credit courses within prison, and we're going to hear some success stories. So if any of you, all of you, can introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about how you fit in the team, and then we can start with that.
My name is Dean McGregor. I am the Assistant Education Manager for the department.
I'm Jessica Evans. I'm a department specialist with prisoner education, and I work a lot with the, employment readiness and workforce development. I'm also involved in the transition pieces that we're currently working on with the education.
I'm Dan Seal. I'm with Vocational Village. I'm the job developer. And basically my job is to help the prisoners when they leave have a job before they go.
Okay, so for Jessica and Dean and Dan, I'm not sure which of you want to handle each of this, but I wanted you guys to provide an overview, if you could, of your education programs I know you let me know there were quite a few. There's the, career and tech, there's the academic, there's the employment readiness, but it sounds like there's more than that. So wherever you're comfortable getting started, we'll just go from there.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start off. We have 27 correctional facilities throughout the state of Michigan. We offer various academic, CTE, post-secondary programming. We have roughly 300 and I want to say 320 staff members that work within education throughout the state of Michigan at various correctional facilities. All of our offenders are required to have their GED or high school diploma. Once they've completed that, they have an option where they can take a vocational trade if they would like. That's done through something within Jess's area, screening process where we'll do career scope and we'll vocational counsel our offenders to find out their interests and aptitudes for a vocational trade. And if they have an interest and potential aptitude for a trade, we can make a recommendation for a vocational trade for them. In addition to our vocational trades, which we have 17 of them statewide at our correctional facilities. When I say 17, there's 17 different trades, and we roughly have 75 vocational trades instructors teaching various trades. A good example of that would be our food tech program, our culinary arts program. We actually have 11 of those statewide. So when I say 17, we have 17, but vast number of them, multiples of them across the state at different correctional facilities. If they are interested in a vocational trade, we can make a recommendation for that. And then through our vocational counseling process, we have employment counselors at our correctional facilities that handle our counseling process with our offenders. We also can make a recommendation for our vocational village. That is a separate screening criteria. So if we feel through the vocational counseling process, they could potentially be a good vocational village student and they meet all of our screening criteria for that. They'll fill out an application for that. That's reviewed up here in our central office location. And then we can make a recommendation based off of the application and our information we get from our counselors at our correctional facilities, whether or not that person would be successful candidate for the vocational village. And then we'll actually make that recommendation. The unique thing that we do here in the state of Michigan is we will transfer our offenders to our vocational trades, whether it's a village or any trade that for that, whatever that may be, we will transfer them to the correctional facility where that trade is at. So that's something we started doing back in 2015, 2016. Typically prior to that, if a offender was sitting at a facility and there was carpentry and culinary arts, and the individual was interested for a vocational trade, that's the trade that they took. Whereas now through the vocational counseling process, we try to get the right prisoner. I saw this on our tabs, right prisoner, right program, right time. So we'll do that counseling and then we'll move the offenders to that. We also offer post-secondary, which is really exploding right now, the Pell Grant system. We have 8 colleges right now throughout our correctional facilities that we're offering various types of degrees through those colleges. We have additional 6 that we're in communication with right now that we're potentially might bring on this winter semester as well. So as the Pell Grants and the post-secondary stuff is expanding, we are constantly in communication with additional colleges throughout the state of Michigan that want to partner with us to offer some of that additional post-secondary opportunities to offenders. Our employment readiness program, which is actually part of our CTE program, deals with every individual will get the recommendation for employment readiness. Employment readiness deals with Microsoft Digital Literacy Money Smart program. And then 6 months prior to their release, we are working on the resumes and handling that for the offenders to make sure they have updates in regards to all that. A lot of soft skills that we do with inside that program as well. Jess, I'll have you jump in if I'm missing something, because I know you'd love to expand further on those.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention with academic, we offer special ed services. We have
Yep.
Title I, we do GED testing and high set testing. So we have a variety of high school equivalency tests that we do. And in addition to employment readiness, we have workforce development program, as we call it, that it's not a class per se that they would take, but it does get the offender set up for success. So we put together a workforce development file, which is very similar to a portfolio. It highlights everything that they've completed while incarcerated that might help them gain employment. We help them obtain their vital documents, such as their driver's license or state ID, their birth certificate, social security card, because that's another barrier that they hit when they leave. As mentioned, that Dean mentioned, we do the vocational counseling. Gosh, there's just so much. I'm gonna leave it with that because I think some of the other stuff that we can mention will come up later on in this conversation. Are we there?
Let me unmute
Oh, there.
myself. And
Okay,
then
I was
ask
like,
Dan,
what happened?
Dan and Dean, is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Before I move into, I wanted to ask about specifically about how you develop education plans, but is there anything overall about any other programs that either Jess didn't mention or you want to say more about? We will go into a little bit more about the post-secondary stuff a little bit later. So if nothing new, I would love to hear about the specialized education plan that you create for everyone, what you use, what's involved in that, if that's all the students.
Yeah, I can chime in and Dean, whatever you want to add, but we realize, especially with the colleges coming on board, right now we're fighting for the colleges, and the vocational trades are fighting for the same students, because they come in, they get their high school equivalency, and then when they hit a certain time period, that's when we start the career scope and vocational counseling process, and then they're put into a trade class, and then it's nearly time to go home. And when we started seeing the colleges come in and realizing that everyone's fighting for the same students, there's different pathways that the students need to take. Some of them want to go to college, some of them want to take a trade, and some of them want to do both. So one thing that we've started working on is a process where when they come in at intake, we start their plan right then, depending on, how long they have. But you come in, do you have a high school diploma? Do you have college? Do you already have a trade? What is it that you need? And then we determine there, like, what path they need to take. So if they come in and we see that they still need to get their high school equivalency, well, then the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to be put on a wait list for GED or high set classes and be able to test for that. Then once they get that completed, we look again, how far out are you from your earliest release date? And then we can determine, well, are you interested in college? If not, let's go ahead and get the career scope assessment done, so we can start the voc counseling process and get you on that wait list. Dean can chime in on this part. Right now, we're not enrolling them in college and a trade, but I believe the path that they want to do is go further out for college. So say 8 years away from the earliest release date. That way, when the time comes, if they complete college and there's a trade that kind of lines up with the college degree that they got, then they can take the trade program and then continue again once they leave. So as I mentioned to you earlier, Krista, this isn't something that we were told October 1st is when we want to start doing that process. So up until then, the education plan was kind of developed in the academic classes. They had their adult learning plan, and then in that they would determine, okay, once they get their GED or high school diploma, or in the case if they're a special ed during their IEP, what they're going to do. And then that led to career scope and vocational counseling and so forth. So Dean, did I miss something in there that you want to chime in on?
No, you didn't. I mean, as we've developed more programs and added additional post-secondary items, we've noticed a need for pathways, and how we as a team kind of look together and at the initial intake process where we can start this, and then our goal potentially would be to hire additional staff on board for this, where they're more like counselors. Like, I don't know, the best, like you see at the school where they'll follow them along. So as they complete these things, they're following that path through their incarceration, and that's what we want the offenders to do. Jess will hit the nail on the head in regards to, we're looking at 8 years out for our post-secondary right now, and we don't allow them to do both CTE and post-secondary right now, but it is something that we're looking at, and we have a vast population out there and we want opportunities for everybody. I don't want us to see us doubling up on certain offenders. We want this open to everybody. That's kind of why we narrowed it down to just picking either a CTE or post-secondary, but we're also seeing benefits from doing both. And we're from communication we've had with employers as well. That is something that they're looking at with somebody with an associate's degree that might complete our carpentry program that could make them even more potentially employable. So we are having those conversations right now and what that might look like for us as a department this next fiscal year. So
are you saying if they're less than 8 years out, they can't start the post-secondary education, they have to do the CTE? It's
part of their screening criteria for the colleges is that depending on what their bachelor's degrees, we have associate's degrees, we have a few schools that offers bachelor's degrees. So that's the criteria that they look at for when they're screening for the post-secondary.
Okay.
One thing about the college though is if they're 2 years from their earliest release, they could still get into college at that point, but they can only enroll between, you know, I don't know what the latest they can enroll is, but let's say 1 year to 8 years. Then if you're in a vocational trade, depending on the trade that you're in, it's typically 6 months to 2.5, 3 years. Or in the case that you qualify for the vocational village, you can't do that until you're a year and a half. So because we haven't gone out to 8 years yet with the college, what we're running into is that, well, and it's because it's so new, is that everyone's trying to get the same students in that time, that 2-year time period. So with us starting this education plan earlier on, we could identify those people at like 8 years from earliest release date, 7, 6, whatever the case might be. So that way they can take college sooner, work towards getting their associates, their bachelor's degree, and then being able to take a trade later on if that's possible. The other thing that we've been talking about and looking at too, and the position that Dean was talking about is the guidance counselors, or whatever name they would use for that. For those people that went to college and got their associate's degree, there would also be a path for them to be able to navigate on the outside and continue their college. So once they leave, how do they continue applying for financial aid? Do they still have access to for their Pell Grants if they didn't use it on the inside? You know, whatever other barriers they might have to be able to make those connections. And we do have another specialist in the office that works strictly with the college.
One additional thing I want to add to that, and at Dan's facility, Dan Seals, we have a Calvin program there. We do have some lifers that go through that program. And what we're looking at and what we are doing with them, once they've gotten their degrees, is transferring them out to other facilities and using them more as like a mentor for some other programming. And we've just started doing that right now, where we're transferring them out to other facilities, using them to start up part of some of the post-secondary programming at those facilities, helping the offenders along through that process because they've already been through that as well.
So do the career scope results somehow affect whether you recommend college versus trade, or is it up to the counselor and the student, or is there something about it that would make you make one recommendation or the other in their educational plan?
I don't use that in regards to making a choice for them. For me, it's information for them and a pathway of interest for them, so that I want them to make that best decision, what they feel could benefit them once they're released, or while they're incarcerated with us, what we could assist them in getting the training for to make them more employable once they're released. I don't want to say I use a career scope to say, okay, based off your career scope, I feel you really need college. It really is a conversation piece that we have with our counselors, and using that assessment along with that conversation that we are trying to hopefully make the best decision, or allowing the offender to make the best decision. We're basically guiding them with information that we hope can provide them the best decision while they're incarcerated for their post-release life in regards to career path and so forth.
Is there any flexibility? For instance, if you start down the college path and maybe it's not working the way you expected it to, or can they switch back into?
We have
trade?
had that situation. Keep in mind, if they're a Pell student, if they drop our college program midterm, they're responsible for repayment of that tuition cost.
Okay,
But if that semester has ended and that vocational training opportunity has come up, we basically sit down with them and say, hey, we have an opportunity for you. 4 months ago, you were interested in a vocational trade. You are in college right now. Are you still interested in continuing going through college, or would you like to look at that opportunity for a vocational trade now? We have that conversation with them,
okay,
so they can make a good decision regarding that.
okay. We have a question from Desi Johnson. She asked, if a person's aptitude isn't up to par for a certain occupation, does that impact the goal development for them?
So during the voc counseling process, we do look at their interest in their aptitude through Career Scope. We also look in advance to see what their TABE scores were or how their GED test scores were, high set. And we do take that into consideration. There are some trades that we offer that are really math heavy, and that's going to be the big piece of aptitude. And in those cases, we might try to encourage them or recommend a trade that wouldn't require that much. However, we do have tutors in all the classrooms, and if someone really wants to focus on a specific trade area, those teachers and those tutors will work with the student in order to be successful in that class. Now, there are times that they just struggle so much that they just can't do it. So in those cases, they will look at it individually. Dan, did you want to add anything to that? Because you work real closely with all your instructors.
Yeah, I wanted to add something to that. When it comes to vocational counseling as a whole, I tend to look at it as a holistic situation. I tend to look at their family structure, their goals in life. I need to know what this person wants to do as a whole. And these scores, whether it be TABE, Career Scope, plays into that. So we make sure we look at them as an entire person when it comes to where they want to go and what they want to do. So it can play a part in it, but it doesn't define where they go and what they want to do. They ultimately decide where they want to go. We just want to lead them in the direction that best fits them and where the goals are going.
And we in some of the classes too, especially if people have learning disabilities, they will alter the class a little bit, where maybe they don't put them through certain portions of the class because they know it might be too difficult for them, but at least they can get something out of the curriculum.
So this ties into that whole right student, right trade, right time. So is there anything, I know we talked about that earlier, but is there anything else about that philosophy that we did not hit yet that you might want to say anything about?
I think the biggest thing on that, a little backstory with the Department of Corrections on that is, when I say years ago, I'm going back from my career, early 90s, where you're putting a prisoner would get a recommendation from a pro board for a vocational trade. And then if that offender was sitting at whatever facility it may be, and that person still has 15 more years to go on their incarceration, they would take the trade right then. Well, that to me isn't good, because I want the offender to be in the program as close as I can to the release date, so that their information that they're receiving is transferable as soon as they get out. In addition to that, we revamped all of our vocational trades programs so that they offer some form of state or national credential. And the bulk of our state or national credentials that we offer within our trades are either good for 2 years or 5 years. So I don't want to give an offender a CTE program that credential is going to expire before their release. So again, that's where it comes into finding the right prisoner, right program, right time. And that's again through the vocational counseling process. Good vocational counseling process with our ECs, and then transferring them to the correct program as close as they can to their release date, so that again we can make them most employable once they get out.
And what education opportunities are available? For instance, if you wanted to do it closer to their release, what can they do in the meantime if they have those years before that? Can they work toward that trade, or can they do something else?
There isn't, again, that's where the post-secondary might come into play, but, and this jumps kind of ahead to a few of your, I can see some investment stuff that we have for question 7. We are adding Chromebooks to our educational portfolio. All of our correctional facilities will have Chromebooks. And we are going to add a bunch of curriculum pieces to expand on some of our vocational trades that we offer right now. But again, we can offer additional stuff. It's basically a 3-year plan. So right now, the initial will be, it'll go into our vocational trades classrooms. It'll go into our academic classrooms. Any of our instructors will have Chromebooks within their classroom, approximately 12 of them for each instructor. And they can expand upon their curriculum of what they already are teaching. 3-year plan would be, we have Wi-Fi within all of our facilities, and some of those Chromebooks will be allowed to transfer back to the unit. So now we can issue some stuff out for some people that might potentially be coming into our program. They're waiting to get into this program. We can offer some interest. We can have them do some more additional research in regards to those. Long-term goal is where we're actually, we do apply for jobs right now. A lot of that's always done through Dan, who's a job developer at one of our vocational villages. Dan sends that information out to employers, but future goals would be that we have the offender actually apply for those jobs through the Chromebook. So, and I can tell you, anybody that's on here that works in corrections and you're dealing with technology like that, it is a process. So that's all I'm going to say. It's a process.
Well,
we have great ideas, but again, there's security features that we always have to take into consideration while we're doing this.
Yeah. One thing I'll mention too, Krista, is depending on how much time they have, they do have jobs at the facilities. And actually, one thing that was pretty cool is I was doing voc counseling with a guy that was an electrician for like a helper person. You know, he walked around with the staff and he learned some electrical. And during that time, he said, well, you know, I've already got this experience. I don't really need a trade for it. And through conversation, I was able to encourage him to apply for the vocational village, and he agreed to do, and he went ahead and got in because he had nothing other than saying that he did it to show that he knew how to do this electrical work. So being enrolled in a trade class and getting that certificate and doing the MIOSHA training and NCCER, like he came out and actually had documents that someone out in the community would have to show that he got certain amounts of training done. So that's pretty cool. When you can work with someone that maybe has some job experience. You know, we have a lot of people that work in the kitchen and they want to further their culinary skills. So, you know, they will take the trade program and learn further about that. So there are jobs in the facilities that do line up with some of the trades we take. Because, you know, if someone has 20 years in, it's hard to put them in an education program when there's so many people getting so close to leaving. But the facilities do try their best to make sure that people are working in one way or another.
And again, it's like what you said earlier, it's like you're looking at their whole path and you're looking at their whole situation, not just that one piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Krista, I wanted to mention too with our programs, Dean had mentioned the employment readiness and the resume workshop we have, and that's something that is being revamped right now. Our administrator and education manager actually met with some returning citizens on the community to find out what were things that that we were missing inside as far as providing, you know, what they actually need to be successful upon release. You know, technology is a huge thing. So they, one thing they talk about specifically is going to the grocery store and using the self scanners and thinking like, oh my gosh, one, how do I do it? And two, they're not going to think that I am going to steal from them from doing this. And with that, they started looking at using virtual reality to do some virtual training with some of the students, so that way they can get that hands-on experience they wouldn't otherwise be able to get. So that was something else that was being looked at as well, which is a pretty cool thing that we're at that point in the world now that we can teach people things through virtual reality.
They'll see it before they get out there.
And that's the whole key. What Jess just said, like, I want to be able to take virtual reality and an individual, once they get out, what's your first day look like? And maybe we could do some scenarios of what someone's first day would look like, going to the parole office, maybe going to the Secretary of State's office to finish up whatever we weren't able to get in regards to IDs, or filling out a FAFSA form, or walking in and getting open up a bank account. I mean, it's just those things that we're catching off of talking with offenders that are out there right now, or some of the concerns, barriers that they deal with on a day-to-day basis that we want to incorporate within to some of our programs, so they're a little more familiar, a little more comfortable once they get out.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Are there any other, I know the Chromebooks is a big thing. Is there any other improvements coming down the line in any of your other programs?
For CTE, yes, we are always looking for expansion. We have a new CTE program, which is going to be a diesel program that we're going to add to one of our vocational villages. We're actually going to expand and have 3 bays inside there. We're partnered with one of Michigan's largest grocery store chains, which I'm probably not at liberty to say right now. But they're going to provide us some semis to work on, and then they have committed to hiring a potential percentage of our offenders coming out of that program. So, and a lot of that expansion process and where we come up with some of those ideas is through our village, and we constantly have employer tours down in there, and people come in and see what we're doing, and they have ideas, and then they have needs. That's where the DTE line clearance tree trim program came up because they had a need, and then we developed a program down there specifically for them, and that's again through conversations with employers what the needs are here in the state of Michigan. One aspect that we're obviously looking at right now with cars is EV, electric vehicles. Where can we tap into some resources for that? State of Michigan is building large GM battery plant close here to Lansing. It's going to employ thousands of people, and we're having those conversations as well for potential trades.
I'm sorry, Jessica, I thought you were going to say something. So in terms of the employer connection, and even with the VR that you're going to start using, so are employers, as you speak to these employers and you partner with them, I would imagine you'll be learning from them about things they may need. So you may be able to open up this VR to any of your other programs as well, not just for the one that you're, not just for some of the barriers, but maybe even some of the training itself, I would imagine.
Absolutely. We've had those conversations. One, I'll use heavy equipment. When I say diesel, there's diesel equipment where you're dealing with trucks, light duty trucks and heavy truck semis. And then there's heavy equipment repair. Within heavy equipment repair, there's some great VR training tools. It could be even a heavy equipment operator where there's opportunities for that. Obviously, I'm not going to have an individual driving around our facilities with a large piece of equipment like that, but virtual reality offers that opportunity and offers that training. And I've talked with local companies here in our Lansing area that have that same type of training, and we've looked at that and potentially are looking at that down the road as well.
That's cool. We have Desi Johnson says they use virtual training utilizing Oculus, and
Yep.
it allows for them to do voc exploration and some training. So it sounds like, people are getting the word on this. It's really cool. It's every time we talk, there's just another cool thing that comes out of the conversation. And again, even to the fact that it came out of your conversation with the returning citizen, that this is something that they were concerned about, and then you hear it from them and then you build from that. And that's, the kind of commitment that we just love to hear about. So I did want to circle back though, and I don't know if we talked enough about it. The partnerships that you made with you said you have 8 colleges now and there's 6 more that you're speaking with. How did that whole process start? How did you partner with them? And do they all offer the same types of programs, or do you use certain schools for certain programs?
They actually all vary. I want something that obviously there's certain schools like Calvin would be more like a business administration or faith-based community type leadership certification that we might get from them. But as we talk more with additional colleges, we're looking at the needs within the state of Michigan, business types degrees. Actually, I just had a conversation with one yesterday. They're looking at some potential engineering types of degrees. And then what we do is that there is no application process with us. There is an application process with Pell to get the Pell recognition and the funding that way. But for us, it's more of, what are your interests? What would you like to bring to the table for MDOC? And we kind of look at what we currently are offering. The biggest thing for us, to be honest with you, is space right now. Is there space to offer that? Where are they going to be interested in offering that type of programming? We actually have a meeting in a couple of weeks with potentially adding some additional college programs up in our Upper Peninsula. If you're not familiar with Michigan, Upper Peninsula is beautiful, but is a very distance from Lansing area. So it's staffing. We have those conversations with them in regards to what their responsibilities are in regards to staffing and providing those programs. From our standpoint, we are coordinating the setups in regards to call outs, getting them the space and basically doing all the security checks and everything for that. But in regards to the actual program and delivery of the program, it's on the college, and the people that do come in, we have to provide them the specific training and so forth. So we have those conversations with them. But in regards to picking and choosing colleges, really it's they bring to the table to us what they're offering, and then we try to fit that within a facility that will best work with them and us at the same time. And then we got to look at our population too, and the interest that we feel that might be out there for the offenders as well.
And they're coming in to teach, or this is online, or is it a combination?
Nope, they're coming in to teach. COVID did put some restrictions in regards to that, where it was pamphlets and books were dropped off. Lesson plans were planned that way. But now that COVID has opened back up in regards to us being allowed to have people come into the facilities, the instructors come into the facility. That's the whole design of it from day one. They have set days, times that they would come in throughout the week and teach their programming.
And are these students getting, I know they're taking classes, but are any of them, will they come out with an associate's? Are they getting credits that they can then use when
Nope. They'll come out. I'll have actually, Dan, if you want to expand on the Calvin program and what they're coming out with there.
Calvin will come out either with an associate's or a bachelor's degree. And we actually do ceremonies here for them that graduate. So it's pretty cool to see inside correctional facility an actual graduation for those that complete an associate's or a bachelor's degree.
That is cool.
We've actually just wrapped up. Yesterday was our last graduation for the year. It was at our women's facility. Dan's facility, which was a Calvin graduation, was probably our largest graduation that we had. We actually rented tents. We probably had over 200 people inside the facility that came in for that graduation. It was quite an event, but it was a really cool event. Calvin is very supportive of our programs that we offer within corrections, and they're always looking for opportunities to expand within our department.
That is cool. And your schools that you're still speaking with, so are they offering, I know you don't have to say who, but are they offering different types of programs than the ones you have, or you just need more of the same because you need more of a demand?
Some of the same, some of them are different. Again, it comes back to potentially some engineering, business management. We were also having some conversations with computers and what that type of training would be. When you get into computers and you get into technology, there's a little bit added layers of approvals that we have to go through, but we're having those conversations and we're not afraid to have those conversations. That's the thing that I like about our department right now, and our leadership is they're not afraid to have those conversations. In the past, to be honest with you, if you would have talked technology, it probably wouldn't have been a straight up no. But right now we have some great leadership in place and really some open minds to some unique and different ideas that are challenging for us, but they offer great opportunities for people once they're released. So it's a good opportunity.
Are you hearing feedback from employers now that you have these partnerships with the post-secondary, and the colleges? Are you hearing that are you getting different types of employers willing to hire or interested in hiring that maybe weren't interested before, but now that they're coming out with these degrees, is it opening more doors?
I'll have Dan add a little bit to this, but I really feel we have, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, we have roughly an employer list of 700 people statewide that Dan sends email blasts out to people that are completing our CTE programs. Adding the colleges in there only enhances that. The more, again, what sells our program, we can talk about everything, but until you've actually walked through and you've seen our CTE programs, you've seen everything that we have in place, that's what sells the program. And then the employers, when they're walking through, we run our classes at the same time. We don't stop everything just to do tours. I mean, classes are running. So if I'm an employer and I'm going through, I can have a conversation with any student in there, and we're open to that. We're fine with them having those conversations. And that actually have people have hired individuals right on the spot just through those conversations as they're going through. So that's what's unique. And again, what's I feel is special with our leadership right now is they're open to those things. And again, in the past, that would have probably been a no, that's not going to happen. But we are really opening up our doors for opportunities, and it helps reduce our recidivism rate as well. So in our population.
Can I add to that as well, just so you know that there's a lot of employers out there who'd be willing to hire our guys. And the base is out there, and there's a number of employers that have jumped in and helped, but add to it a degree would just make them that much more employable. And we have right now employers that would hire them. Now they'll hire them for their skill level, but it would help them advance if they had a degree. So that's definitely a whole nother piece to this great puzzle that we're putting together to make them employable and, you know, to be a far greater success in society.
The one thing to add to what Dan was saying too is it's not just jobs that we're looking for, it's careers, it's a career path for these people. So nothing wrong with flipping burgers. We have people that can go out and flip burgers, but we're trying to develop career paths for these individuals, and the companies want these career paths for them as well when they're going out. So
well, that's what I was about to say, that are they able to bring them in at possibly a higher level job than they would have if they didn't have the degree? So they may start a step ahead on the path than they would have without the degree.
Yeah. Krista, another thing is every month so education falls under offender success, and we have an area under offender success called the Offender Employment and Opportunities Unit. And it just so happens Robert McGeorge used to work in education, and Kyle Teachma, who worked in education, both work over, well, Robert's now the manager of offender success, and then Kyle's in the OEOU, as we call it. And Kyle used to be the specialist for the college programs. So anyway, with that being said, every month I provide to Kyle and his group students that left that had vocational trades and that had college completions or college credits. And aside from our job developers in education, that group is working with people once they're on parole to continue looking for jobs and placing them for employment based off of their trade or their education level. So we have the job developers inside that do what they can with the students inside before they leave. And then whoever they can't capture, or maybe someone's not completely ready to work yet, then the Offender Employment Opportunities Unit will work with them and their parole agent on the outside to continue seeking employment. But they do look at those that have had the college and career training, because those are the ones that are going to be more employable and you know, allow us to build those connections and trust that we need.
And I see that I know Robert McGeorge is on this
Yep.
on this call. So if you care to comment or chime in, feel free. And I do have a question from one of our audience members. What is your budgeted average cost per offender for CTE training at the collegiate level?
at the collegiate level, they're awarded, just for some numbers in regards to that, we have 581 active students in college right now. Pell awarded students, they're 455. So that's Pell grant. They're covered, that their cost for tuition is covered through the Pell grant, and roughly about 37 that are self-pay. So they pay for that college on their own. As far as costs go for that, I do not have data in regards to the actual cost of tuition, because the 98% of it is covered through a Pell.
And you assist with all of that application process, or do you do that? They do that right directly to the school or through
Directly
you to the school?
Directly to the school. They'll fill out their FAFSA forms. We get that information. We send that over to the school, and that's processed through the school.
Okay. Okay. So, geez, you guys hit all my questions. Success stories. I know you said you have a ton, but if there's any in particular you want to share, we would love to hear, anything that you think the people that are joining us today may want to take away with them. And if it's not a success story, if you just have a takeaway that you think, everyone
Well,
deserves to hear.
Yeah, I think Dan could actually talk a little bit further about Kelvin and the partnership with them, because it is so big and they have success with that and with people that have gone through the CTE programs.
Yeah, I can fill you in a little bit about kind of as a whole. Kelvin as a whole, Kelvin has done so much when it comes to partnering with our group here, not only at the facility, but on the outside, but inside, I can speak to that. They tutor here. They have become mentors here to different populations. So when it comes to Kelvin as a partnership with us, did a lot for the group that's here when it comes to helping them with math, reading, and then helping the guys that may need a little bit of counseling, a little bit of help on the side. When it comes to employers, we've had employers go as far as buy people vehicles. We've had people that put up money for housing. I mean, it has been such a tremendous outlay for these guys and a blessing for these guys. What they get from our employers, they're willing to step up to the plate and help them with tools, help them with clothing. I mean, we do that on the outside. We have a department that does that as well, but they're willing to step in and do that as well, just to come alongside them and help them with mentoring, with housing. There has been so many different situations where people have started businesses on the outside. We did a couple that did mobile welding, and they have become very successful in the Detroit area. People that's working with the bridge right now, welding on the bridge. So there's so many that we could discuss, but in a whole, it's just been such a great program and what it's done for these guys. And like Dean said, it's not just a job, it's a career for these guys. It's a changing way of life. It gives them now a potential to take care of their families and just be a productive member of society.
One thing that I know we haven't even talked about, and we probably don't even have time to talk about, but is Vital Docs. It's a huge part of education, huge part of what we do. Our offenders, when they're leaving, with the one barrier obviously is state ID, driver's license, social security card. You need all these things for employment, to assist with employment. And prior, probably 2 years ago, we really dug deep into that, and we made it a number one priority for us that offenders that are leaving have a state ID, driver's license, social security card when they leave, because again, it was one of those barriers. And we just passed, we've been really hitting this heavy. We just passed the 10,000 mark of offenders that have left with those documentations. It gives kudos to our facility staff for working diligently to get those documentations, our central office staff who work hard in regarding recognizing those offenders when they're getting out, prior to them getting out, that we're getting that information to the right place. If they go to another state, we're buying that state ID to make sure that they have it once they're released. So, really, it was a big priority from our director. It was a barrier that we were recognizing, and we are really hitting it hard. And I think we're at less than 2% of people that are leave right now that have that. We want having that documentation. And when I say 2%, less than 2, I think we're at 1.3% last month. People that left that didn't have that. So for us, that's a huge success. We're always at the 98, 99% of our guys that are leaving have that documentation. And for whatever reason that they're not, they might have refused it. That would be why that percentage is like that. So.
You don't want to put all that investment in, and then it's the documentation that is the barrier.
Yep.
I do have a follow-up question about completion percentage. What's your completion percentage for offenders who start any of your education programs, who follow all the way through to credential attainment?
Well, you saying like once they start our trade, I'm going to say we're at, I don't have that exact percentage. We're over 90% that will complete the trade. For whatever reason they didn't complete the trade, it might be lack of interest from a few, or it could be just for whatever security reasons, something might have happened where their behavior caused them to be removed from that program. But our percentage is very high in regards to that. From our vocational village standpoint, I believe we're at 70, I want to say 72, 73% employment rate for our offenders that are leaving out of that program at our vocational villages, which is very good. Our recidivism rate, I do not have that, but I know Robert's on here, and if he chimed in, he could probably tell you exactly what that is, because I know he deals with those numbers. But it is very low in regards to our offenders that are returning, who are completing our vocational village, and that's the ones that we're tracking right now. We're not tracking statewide. We have job developers at the facilities. Our job developers also work with what are called IPAs, which are institutional parole agents, who are assigned to our villages also. And that's where we can gather that data and help collect that information, because they're tracking them post-release that way.
I just got a little chime in from someone that the return to prison rate right now is at 10%. And then to add on to what Dean just said, to answer further about that question, once they're enrolled in a career and tech education, that's a core program. So they aren't, so well, back to the right prisoner, right time, that motto, we make sure that they're enrolled in class so that way they have enough time to complete the class. And it's rare circumstances that they would be removed from the class. So as Dean said, maybe it's a security thing. Very rarely will they be transferred out of that facility to another one. It does happen on occasion, but it's so rare that someone wouldn't finish that class. Krista, the other thing I wanted to mention real quick too, because this is something that we do in Michigan, which I think is valuable for employers, is so we do career scope at the front end to help them determine, you know, what path they want to go. Then once they're enrolled in a trade or college, we offer ACT Work Keys assessment, and that is an assessment that's given to test like their working skills and their working knowledge. And once they take that, that could allow them to qualify for what we call the certificate of employability. And that is issued through corrections, and it's in legislation. And to qualify for that, you have to have at least a silver or higher in the National Career Readiness Certificate. You have to be, for lack of better terms, misconduct free, and you have to have a certain level of college or CTE completion while you've been incarcerated. And then you get that certificate. And when Dan or another job developer or someone from the Offender and Opportunities Employment Unit, Offender Employment Opportunities Unit, or even an employment counselor is talking to someone about that offender that got that certificate, we can let them know that they've been further rehabilitated compared to some of the other people leaving prison. And it also provides some security for the employers. So it's not a bond, but it does prevent them from certain lawsuits that might come from hiring a returning citizen, and it just kind of gives them a step ahead of everybody else. So that's something else that we offer through corrections that is important for the employers to know about.
And you said that was a certificate of employability?
Correct.
Okay, and that's through Michigan, so there may be other states that offer that, but
yes,
that's your state.
Yep, there are. I've researched, and there are some other states that offer it, and they do it differently than our state does. But yeah, absolutely, it's really very cool to be able to showcase that.
Krista, I just want to clarify too, our academic and our vocational trades instructors are all state employees. It's not funded through the colleges or anything like that. They all, again, work for the state. We pay them through our budget. So it's not a private company or anything like that we're dealing with in regards to that.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're down to, it looks like we're at our last minute. If there's any questions, we could check the chat one last time if anybody has anything they want to add to the chat. Again, the hour flies whenever we talk to you guys, but thank you so much for joining us. Again, we always learn so much, and we're going to put your contact information on the screen if anyone has any questions for you specifically. And then you could also reach out to me through CareerScope if you have any questions about CareerScope or how it works in corrections as well. And then if you have any questions or suggestions for future webinar topics, please get in touch. Jessica and Dean and Dan, again, I appreciate it. twice.
Yeah,
Twice. I
of course.
appreciate it. You came back for more. And people are commenting, everyone's saying how informative it is, and it sounds like Michigan's
Yeah.
doing some great work. So we appreciate that.
Krista, if I could put a plug in too, we also, a lot of our education staff belong to CEA, which is Corrections Education Association.
Yes.
So I encourage people to take a look at that. We actually have conferences every year for the state, and they can learn more about what MDOC is doing, and if other correctional institutions in the state come in, whether it's federal, local, they can share information about what they do as well. So anyone that's interested in prisoner education, I highly recommend they check out that organization.
Yeah, and we have participated with there's CEA National, and then there's
Yeah.
the regions and the states. So yeah, we are familiar with them as well. So it's a great organization to partner with. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we sign off? Again, thank you so much.
No, thanks everybody for coming on and listening to us. It's exciting
Yeah,
to share
thank
the
you.
information.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate it. Okay,
Yeah.
and we will be sharing the recording and everyone's contact information when this is over. So expect, you'll see an email and some postings as well. So thank you again, and stay tuned for next one will be in November. So we will be sending information on that soon.
All right.
Thanks
great.
again.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Krista.